before we start, I would just like to say that some of our content may be triggering for some of our listeners and viewers. If you need help, please see your GP or check out our show notes for a list of support services. While advice is given during these podcasts, this is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice. Neither the host nor the guests of this podcast may be held responsible for any action or claims in any way resulting from the information provided.
Hello and welcome to the Tough Mothers podcast and Tough Mothers TV. I'm your host, Dr. Jen. I have a really great episode for you today. I'm speaking with Gemma Douglas. Gemma is the founder of the Motherhood Project, which is an online support service for mothers. And I've been wanting to speak to Gemma for quite a while because we haven't met before, but I read her contributions and realized that our journeys are very, very similar, and our missions are very similar as well. So I'm really excited to have Gemma on today. We're going to be speaking about her motherhood journey, how the Motherhood Project came about, and also the importance of sharing your story and listening to other women's stories as well. So this is a real goodie, and I'm very excited to share it with you. Hi, Gemma. Thank you so much for being on the Tough Mothers podcast and Tough Mothers TV. I'm so excited to have you. It's been, a dream of mine to have you on the show because I think that our vision and our mission is so very much aligned. And I can't wait to share with everyone your journey and your journey into motherhood and how your business, the Motherhood Project came about.
Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, thank you, Jen. It's a real honour to be asked to come on your podcast. It really is. I've been following your work for a while now. So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
so do you want to just tell us a little bit about your journey into motherhood? Because I'm sure there's lots of stories behind that as well.
Absolutely. So my motherhood journey started 7 years ago. I lived in Auckland at the time and we fell pregnant, my partner and I. We weren't planning, which in hindsight I know was, we're very fortunate to have fell pregnant like we did as well, because with the amount of fertility issues out there with mothers that my heart goes out to. So, but it did put us on a challenging journey to begin with, to get our heads around it, especially when we didn't even live together at the time. And we were living in Auckland at the time, and straight away, when we found out that we were having this little baby, I knew that and we both knew we just desperately wanted it. But we didn't know what we were doing at all. Didn't have a clue. I remember I used to drink coffee then a lot, and I didn't, I hadn't grown up around babies. My sister had 2 babies at the time, but she didn't live in the same place. So I hadn't been, I hadn't grown up around it or been surrounded much. And I remember just giving up, not knowing what to drink or anything or eat, just not knowing.
Yeah.
So I just gave up coffee from that day forward. And I actually have not had a coffee since 7 years later, which is bizarre, I know, for a mother. Anyway, so we had our darling daughter, Maddie, who's now 6, in Auckland. And when she was 5 months old, we moved down to Hawke's Bay, where my husband grew up. And I didn't know anybody. I knew my parents-in-laws, and I was moving to a new place with a very little baby that I was still trying to get my head around motherhood and I continue to try and get my head, and still am trying to get my head around motherhood. So I moved down there with this little baby, and we just started to try and create a new life for ourselves. I knew that it was going to be a challenge anyway, moving to a new place, even without a baby, but I also felt deep down that I needed this challenge. I needed this growth, probably this growth more than challenge. And then we decided to try for another baby quite soon after we moved down here in Hawke's Bay. It was kind of like, well, I don't know anyone. My husband's working 2 jobs. We might
as well.
It was kind of like that. And we were really fortunate that I became pregnant quite soon after. So I had my second daughter 15 and a half months later.
Wow.
And I realized, yeah. I realize now why people wait with the gap.
Yep.
But in saying that, I didn't know any different at the time, and it was beautiful having two babies, one older baby and a little baby. But the big challenge came for me with motherhood when my second daughter was diagnosed with pertussis, whooping cough, at 8 weeks. 8 weeks, 8 weeks old.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she'd had her 6-week vaccinations.
Yeah.
And we don't know where it came from. It was just one of those random things that happened. And my husband was overseas at the time working, because that's what he did. I always get emotional talking about this time of my life. I think it just takes me back there. But yes, it was an incredibly challenging part of my life for the next 3 months. The illness lasted, and in hindsight, not knowing the extent of that illness was a good thing, I think, for my husband and I. And then after the 3 months, and so that that sent me into extreme sleep deprivation. So for an hour every hour at least, day and night, she would cough, but it wasn't a cough. It was a guttural sound of her trying to remove mucus that was too thick. And that's why it's life-threatening to newborns and not older children, or adults, but the mucus is too thick for newborns to be able to cough up, and so that can block the airways. So we just had to kind of shift into survival mode and just get through it. And I don't think I realized the depth of fight or flight mode that I probably survived in during that time. But we got through it, and with beautiful help from my parents and Andrew's parents. And then she had complications for the rest of that year with not being able to hold down food, losing weight, just lots of challenges for us to deal with and work through. And it was that motivation that I realized, I didn't reach out for help really during that time. I didn't reach out to my friends. But during that time I turned inward, and I found a real strength through mindfulness, through power of intention, and through meditation, something I had done earlier in my life. And that took me back to that. Sorry, I know I'm talking a lot.
No, that's great, because I think, it's so important to learn how mothers deal with their challenging situations, and for everyone it's different. And because I had quite similar situation to you, it wasn't whooping cough, but my daughter had severe reflux and bad eardrums, my third child, and so I didn't sleep at all either. And it's very interesting to me how everyone deals with it differently, and because for me, eventually, after I sort of drove myself into a crisis point, I started doing similar things to you as well. So I'm really kind of in awe of you finding it before you hit that crisis point. So yeah, that's amazing.
There definitely were moments that I didn't know if my mental health was being affected too far, or I didn't, but I felt like that I was able to keep hold of it through kind of inner contemplation a lot, and just coming back. I did a lot of self-help reading over that time. Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now.
I love that book.
Chopra. And so I kind of just grabbed onto what I could to get me through those times. And I know that has changed my life since then. And that was my motivation, I think, to, I'd been dreaming of having this place to go. I live rurally, so I'm at home. And then we had another child, and I'm at home. I was at home a lot. I had 3 children under 4. And I didn't move, but I didn't move much from my home, and I didn't want to. And I wanted and dreamed of a space online that you could go and you didn't feel alone. You could share your stories. It wasn't all about sharing the hard, whereas the hard is definitely a part of motherhood, but it's also about, well, how did we come out of it? The resilience, the growth, the empowerment that came from our challenges. that was the real motivation from what my daughter went through that, brought me to create the Motherhood Project.
Yeah, that's amazing. And especially, you said you live rurally.
Really.
Goodness, my goodness. I'm just struggling today. There are so many other women out there, that experience that, or that have moved to another country and maybe are in a city, but still away from their support network. So having something online is so valuable and such a great idea. And yeah, I assume that it came out of some sort of struggle for you as well, because it's such a beautiful business that you've created. And I bet you supporting a lot of women. What do you find women do they come forward to you with their stories once they hear yours?
Yeah, they do. I've heard some just unbelievable stories and messages from mothers, and they come in different ways. I remember I did a post once about how motherhood is hard, and I did it sort of from a third person, and about how just the general motherhood things that we can find hard and challenging. And I had a mother message me and said, the things that you're writing makes motherhood seem so hard. I used to be a mother once, but it makes me not want to be a mother again reading this post. And I was just really shocked by that. I don't get messages like this normally. And I thought, okay, I need to message and see where this is coming from this lady. And it turns out, and I explained that motherhood is hard, and everybody has unique challenges in motherhood, and it's about recognizing that, sharing that, and then how do we move through and grow and share and get to where we need to go and grow. And she opened up at that point and said that she had been a mother and lost her baby, and that she was trying to build up the courage to have another baby. And and I think she was pregnant at the time too. So everybody has their journey, and if we open up to our stories and our vulnerabilities, it allows other people to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think that we need to be really careful, like in this instance, to not read into other people's stories and take them on as our own, because everyone is so different. And, I come from a neuroscience perspective. So the way that the brain is made up for every person going into motherhood is different because of what has happened in our life leading up to that. Our experiences and our actions have shaped our brain. So we will never have exactly the same experience. Like, you've had your story and I've got my story, and say, oh, I've had something similar, but it will never be identical. So we need to be really careful to not take on other people's stories as our own, and certainly not to let them frighten us.
Yes, totally. And I mean, we have to be careful in the way that we deliver it, I think, as well, and
yes,
and remain true to ourselves right throughout it. But there is strength that through sharing that vulnerability, there is great, it's incredibly brave to do that, I think. And some of the stories that I have heard and that mothers are going through is, it's just unbelievable. And I'm not an expert in motherhood, and that's not why I started the Motherhood Project, because I do not have the answers, and that's why I started the Motherhood Project. I initially created a Facebook group and just invited all the mothers I knew in my life, and just invited them to a group, and it just grew from there, because it was just a place of, well, I've got this question, or I need help with this, and it just grew from there, really.
That's wonderful. Yeah, and you're right. I think there's a lot of power in sharing our story for other people to hear. I think that this, as long as we don't take it on as our own, we take from it what we need for ourselves, it can really lighten the load. Like, I'm not alone. Someone else has gone through this. There's nothing wrong with me. This is actually probably quite normal. But also there's a lot of power in sharing it ourselves, and to just, getting it off our chest and being able to express what is our truth. And I encourage all my clients to speak to as many mums as they can, because not only do they help them, but they also help themselves. And I think that's something that we forget in the process. It's like, it is also for us. It's an empowerment for us to share our story, and not just about, I think people, sometimes feel, because motherhood is challenging, that we share our story to scare people or to, you know, put them off. And we need to recognize that it's actually just our truth, or the person's truth who's telling the story, you know, and there's no sort of malice intended.
Absolutely, exactly. With people sharing, we're creating an invitation for others to share as well. And that's all it is, you know, people and mothers need to be ready as well to share their story. And there's a time and a place and a way for them to be able to do that in a safe space as well. And they need to feel safe to be able to do that. So it's, whether it's on an online space or whether it's in a coffee group or whether it's to you or whether it's to me, once they do it, they can feel that kind of expansion and freedom that comes with it.
Exactly. And and like you said, there's so much growth. There's so much growth that comes out of this experience of motherhood. And I think sharing your story is a big, big part in it, to be able to, share and verbalize your truth, because it's your story, you know, so it's important.
Yeah. And it's not a competition either. You know, motherhood's not a competition of sharing who had the worst kind of challenges or who had the best, and there's that side of motherhood that I think I think society is starting to change a bit and become more acceptable of that. No, you've got your story and I've got mine, and this is how, you know, it's the sharing, it's not the competition, is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. And on the flip side as well, you know, this pretending that everything is okay, and that's what gets in trouble in the first place anyway. But you know, this competition of having it all together and, you know, not needing help and stuff, that get rid of that as well. But I agree, society has changed a lot, thankfully, and women are more open to talk about things. It's just, you know, everybody has their thing that they feel maybe makes them look bad or makes them seem like a bad mother. But that's the stuff particularly we need to talk about, right?
Yes, completely. I agree.
Yeah.
And that part takes the most courage, because I mean, other people aren't thinking about other people a lot. They're mostly thinking about their own stories and relating it to their own stories. And it actually makes people feel less alone, that like, I've actually thought that about myself too.
Yeah, exactly. And they feel held and they feel understood. And I think it's so important in a world that has, you know, where we don't actually have the village anymore, to create some sort of feeling of a village, whether it's just one person or it's a community, to go, you're okay. I got you. You know, this is all right. We can do this together. And you know, I've experienced that similar thing, and another person's experienced a similar thing. So I'm a huge advocate for just talking, talking and talking and talking and talking and talking.
Totally. And everybody has such unique ways of how to, you know, what they've learned from their experiences. And so sharing how they, you know, the tools and the strategies or the pathways that brought them to growing through it is so important to share as well.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Yeah. So other than encouraging women to share their stories, what do you think we could, I'm just thinking, I'm just trying to think, how do we encourage women to share if they feel that they're a little bit nervous about going up to someone face to face, or even maybe over email and just going, you know, this is my truth. What do you think, how we could encourage women to speak up? It's a pretty tricky question.
I mean, whenever I put up questions from, you know, other members in the Motherhood Project on Instagram, and they're allowed to share anonymously, and I'll share their answers anonymously onto the stories, the amount of replies I get are just extreme, which is amazing. And so it's kind of the anonymous thing, and maybe sharing that is enough for some of them, that they're getting the words out and they know that it's helping or could help other mothers, but doing it anonymously. Because I remember I listened to your podcast with your, you know, getting education and information for your book, and you reached out to a lot of mothers anonymously, and they were able to, you know, share their stories anonymously. Yeah, I mean, how did you find it?
Oh, for the book, it was like I was inundated. I was absolutely
Yeah.
inundated with
Wow.
people. It's so much so that I ended up just choosing, because I ended up interviewing 1,000 women for the book, but that was
Wow.
out of so many. And the only reason I chose it ended up being 1,000 was because the stories did kind of not repeat themselves, but they were very similar. So, you know, the things were similar, the topics were similar. But if I wanted to keep going, thousands upon thousands upon thousands, I had to get one of my friends to run the Facebook group with me, because I was like, I can't actually even go through all the stories. And they were people I didn't know. So they weren't actually anonymous because they were going through their Facebook profile. So I could have, you know, but anonymous enough because they didn't know me and I didn't know them.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. But then there's still also, I find this barrier sometimes when this anonymity isn't there, you know,
Yeah.
like say for
Yes.
instance in a group like yours, and your group is massive, mine's not as nearly as big as yours, where people feel there might be someone there that they know or that knows the partner or something, and so that they hold back. I don't know.
Totally. Oh, absolutely. And I do it myself, you know. You feel it doing yourself, and you kind of got to talk yourself through it as to
Mm,
why you're doing that. I mean, I held our first motherhood retreat in the weekend,
yeah.
and it was a group of mothers, and it was a small group. We wanted a quite intimate group, and there was, I think, 17, 18 of us. And we we had some meditation, and then we had some really deep, beautiful yoga. And then we weren't even planning to, but we ended up sitting in a group and then just saying, you're welcome to share what brought you here and anything else that you feel compelled to share. And pretty much, I think 80% of us cried in that
Wow.
time. It was unbelievable, the stories and the letting go that these women did and shared in their stories was just so beautiful. And so, the challenges they've been through and where they're at now and what brought them here, it was so beautiful. And
Mm,
that space just, creating spaces like that. We just need a heap of
mm.
spaces like that around the world.
Yeah, you're right. And there's something about it being intimate, I think, that makes it, and you know, when you've spent the day together and you've been together all day, that creates a connection as
Mm.
well. So it's probably easier than if you just go into
Yeah.
a room and it'll say, right, we've got an hour, everyone needs to share.
Still, yeah, still on everything.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. So
Yeah.
yes, maybe you and I can do that together. We can collaborate and we can just make these little pockets all around the world where women can share and
Yeah, and
connect.
the big thing was that it was all mothers. We all had
Yeah.
this shared experience of motherhood, but all of our experiences were so different. And then there were people sharing and giving advice to each other. It was just, yeah. And I just think that's what we need more of. And I feel like there is more things popping up around, on the online space, but coming off, offline to us face to
Yeah.
face. I think it's starting to happen. I'm seeing a ripple effect.
Yeah, I
I feel
agree. There's definitely a lot more support than when I felt when I had my first baby 10 years ago,
that.
where it was still very much just, you know,
Get on
zip,
with it.
zip
Yeah,
it and carry on, you know.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that was already the transition coming into what was going on. Like I can only imagine what it was like 20, 30 years ago, you know,
yeah,
when it was literally
yeah,
like just be quiet and go in the kitchen barefoot, go to make some
yes.
dinner. So
Oh,
that's
completely.
wonderful.
Yeah, and I think the first step for women to share their stories is to open up to just one person that they feel safe with, taking that step. It might
Yeah.
be a friend, or it might be someone they don't know. It might be you, it might be me, it might be in a message or an email, or it might be just to themselves, just
Yeah.
writing down their story to themselves in a journal. Because when we write down our stories, we get it out of our heads, and we can give it more perspective as well sometimes once it's out of our heads. And
Absolutely.
hmm,
Yeah, and I find when we get things out of our head, there's sort of like there is an actual story there. Whereas when it's
hmm,
in our head, it's almost like ruminating, and you go over the same
yeah,
thing, and there's no beginning and there's no end, and you don't come to a conclusion. Whereas if you write things down, and this is not just about motherhood, but you know, life in
no, yeah,
general,
yeah, yeah,
writing
totally.
things down, there's sort of more of a a story there, and you know, and then you can make some changes, figure out some things, and yeah, I agree.
Yeah, oh, it's bringing it out of our subconscious minds down, you know, push down that constant mind chatter. It's bringing it into our awareness, isn't it? Into it, onto paper. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I could talk to you for hours. This has been such a wonderful chat. Thank you so much. I just think, you know, the invitation, as you called it, for women to share their story and to hear other women's stories is something that we need to get out into the world. And I feel so blessed to have met you and to, you know, do this together, even if we're doing it separately, but still doing it together, to get women out there to share their stories and you know, grow and heal and find comfort in other people's stories is so important. So thank you so much for coming on and having this chat. It's been really wonderful.
Oh, it's been really nice. I've loved it. Thank you. Thank you, Jen.
Maybe we'll do another one.
Yes, yeah, totally. If you'd like that, I would absolutely be honoured to. And I just love your Facebook group that you've got. It's just honest sharing from you and from others. And I mean, you are so knowledgeable in what you have studied and done. And I mean, you know, you've got 12 years university study. Yeah, I mean, that gives you a bit of information.
I know a little bit of stuff.
A little bit, yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to say that your Facebook group I just love. Even if I'm a fly on the wall just watching and reading. But there'll be a lot of mothers that do that too.
Yeah. I now it's going to turn into a love fest, but I love your Facebook page too, and I think the stories, like the little snippets that you share from your life, it's just so thought provoking. It's just it just makes you think about something that has happened to you or something that you want to kind of digest. So yeah, I'm going to put it in the show notes, and people can check out all your stuff, including joining your Facebook page, and hopefully learn as much as I have as well.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's lovely.
Thanks so much, Gem.
All right.
Bye.